Good morning and welcome to Elevenses again. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. It's Sunday the 10th of January. This is episode number 103. It's a fairly grey and miserable day here in London, and it's bleeding cold as well. So what have we got for you today's show? We'll have a look at a £70,000 bill to fix a cattle grid that self-driving cars thought was a wall. Mahindra are due to bring bike manufacturing to Banbury in Oxfordshire. The Ron Haslam race school has closed down. That's a story I missed earlier this year. The final bike sales figures for 2020 are in, and the best way to stay warm, according to a journalist, is to splash £18,000 on some Dainese kit. So I'll have a look at all those stories, and so settle yourself down for the next 20 minutes or so. And don't forget, we're back on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11 for today's show. If you've got anything you want to ask, any comments on any of the stories, any feedback at all, anything you'd like me to talk about, do drop me a line, and I'm more than happy to oblige if I possibly can. Right, okay, what have we got? Paul Varnsbury has said, good morning. Hi there, Paul, nice to see you. Right, okay, so on with the show. I've got a picture of the offending cattle grid. There it is. That should pop up on screen. There it goes. Now, what's happened here? Well, Somerset County Council have had to spend £70,000 reprofiling the road either side of this cattle grid. It's on a hill near Minehead. And what's happened is there's been a series of incidents caused by car sensors apparently mistaking it for a wall and then braking hard. Several appear to have left the road. A spokesman said the grid had to be replaced, but thankfully had been no serious collisions. Dave Peake, who's the council's highways service manager, said it's quite a steep hill and the cattle grid's got to be reasonably level. So the problem was this sudden change of gradient. Some of the car's sensors were detecting this as a wall, so automatically applying the brakes. And he said, not surprisingly, this was something that was never considered when the grid was put in many years ago. So basically what they've had to do is raise about 90 feet of the approach road to take out the sudden change of gradient where the cattle grid actually sits. If I show you the second picture, you could probably get a slightly better idea. This one's nicked from Google, but you can see the cattle grid down there in the distance where the people are standing. And because of the sudden flattening out where that grid is, the cars have been misidentifying it. Professor Andrew Graves, who's an automotive analyst at the University of Bath, has been quoted as saying, technology like assist brake has been around since the 1980s, but if you're following something too close or there's a barrier in front of you, the car will apply its brakes suddenly. Modern cars are pretty good at doing this, but they're still not perfect, and sometimes they send out a very confused message. And basically he concludes, a lot of this technology is not clever enough at the moment. Which of course rather begs the question, why are we in such a headlong rush to build autonomous cars? Nick has said hello, Russell's there. Connection here. There we are reconnected. All right, we lost a moment there. Alan Andrews asks if speed humps are covered in the highway code. Well, I think they are, yes. Okay, next question. What's BSA Motorcycles doing? Well, you may recall that the BSA motorcycle brand was bought some years ago, and after a couple of changes of possession, it's ended up being part owned by Mahindra, who are one of the biggest motorcycling brands in India. and Anand Mahindra is keen to revive this iconic brand. And what's due to happen is that it's due to go on production in Banbury in Oxfordshire. At the moment, the research facility is scheduled to be construction for that is due to start soon. Then there'll be a planned factory which will create 100 jobs initially, and they're hoping that production of actually a petrol engine bike will go ahead as soon as this summer, and then thanks to the research facility, they'll be able to build an electric machine the following year. The hope is that the electric version will be manufactured in the UK completely. And ideally, 250 jobs will be created. Now, this resurrection of the British motorbike industry is said to be an ambition of Anand Mahindra, who's the chairman of the Mahindra Group. And he basically says that they want to invest in the UK because of the long history of motorcycle production in the country. And the electric bike project itself is expected to cost around 9.2 million. And half of that, 4.6 million, has come from a government grant. BSA, Birmingham Small Arms, were once the world's largest manufacturer of motorcycles, and they were based in Small Heath in Birmingham, but they ceased production in the 1970s after going bankrupt. Mahindra do have a bit of a reputation for resurrecting moribund bike names. You may remember the Czech brand Jawa CZ. Well, in 2016, Mahindra bought the rights to that name, and Jawa production was officially relaunched 2 years later. And that actually turned into a fairly major success story. They sold 50,000 bikes in India in the first year. And Mahindra want to see that repeated with the BSA bikes. Okay, so don't forget, you are watching Kevin Williams here with my Elevenses webcast, which goes out live on Wednesdays and Sundays. So don't forget, you can catch up again at 11 on Wednesday next week. All right, so what else? Well, one of the sort of sad consequences of lockdown, coronavirus generally, has been that businesses have struggled, and some well-known names have gone out of production or out of business. And one that I failed to spot earlier in the year was that the Ron Haslam Race School has shut down after 24 years and an estimated 87,000 customers taking their track school. The close down was actually announced in July, and the final track training session went ahead at Donington on Monday, October the 26th. Former GP racer Ron Haslam set up the school back in 1997 after retiring from racing, and he's always been supported by Honda. He's had a long association with Honda right back to his racing days, in fact. The school catered for all levels of rider, from novice to expert, and some of the riders that we probably know as now as household names actually went to the race school at some point or another, and they include Alex Lowes, Carl Crutchlow, multiple MotoGP winner, and British Superbike champion Shane Byrne as well, also all attended the race school. So that's a rather sad piece of news. Okay, what's the best-selling bike of December? Well, it's not Honda, it's not BMW, it's not Triumph, it's Lex Moto. Here are a couple of other takeaways from the final registration statistics of the year. Overall, PTW registrations were down just 2.6%, at a fraction under 105,000 units, although this figure was slightly enhanced, as the press release puts it, by the registration of some Euro 4 PTWs ahead of the introduction of the 2021 Euro 5 regulations, which are coming in very soon. I wondered why the 650 V-Strom should suddenly leap into a top-selling category, and that would be the reason why that V-Strom will be a Euro 4 model, and they've pre-registered it to make sure that it actually complies with the sales regulations. Sales of scooters and small capacity motorcycles have propped up the numbers. They're up significantly, but frankly, everything over 126cc was down quite significantly. So whilst the the sort of the reports are bullish, I'm sure it's not quite as good as news as it sounds in the dealers. The categories take the biggest hits, not surprisingly, with the 650 to 1000cc and the 1000cc plus categories. Both of those bike sales were down over 15%, so that will have impacted dealers quite badly, I guess, and also the bike manufacturers and importers. But one category which will need to be added to these charts to get their own category are electric PTWs. As I've been talking about on a regular basis, the numbers of electric bikes are growing. Suron actually appeared in the sort of electric moped category, above some of the bigger manufacturers in terms of sales this month. And in fact, PTW registrations were actually up over 50% on 2019. So there is an interest in those machines. All right, okay. Don't forget, if you enjoy the show, you can consider heading over to my Ko-fi page. There's the URL, and making a small donation that'll give you access to my Better Biking articles. So somebody wrote something rather nice about them the other day, which I meant to put into my notes for the show, but I've completely forgotten. So, okay, who else have we got here? Keith Wheeler's arrived. Morning, Keith. Good to see you here too. Right, okay, so final item for this morning, sort of fairly short and sharp this morning. Some years ago, I was contacted by a writer from the Daily Telegraph, a chap called David Williams, for input into an article he was writing on riding in poor weather. There was a bit of sort of email ping pong as we sorted out what it was he actually wanted to ask and what I felt I could usefully contribute to his article. And we nailed down some topics for discussion, and then we actually had a 40-minute phone conversation while he interviewed me. The article appeared a couple of weeks later, and not entirely to my surprise, my input into this was reduced to a single line, which was quite frankly fairly meaningless. Anyway, I happened to notice that the same chap was responsible for writing in the Evening Standard. And he put out an article earlier this week about how to deal with the current cold snap on two wheels. So, to quote, braving the latest beast from the east, especially in London, he says, is a simple matter for drivers, but motorcyclists, especially those who need to carry on riding throughout the winter, it can be hazardous, demanding a different mindset, different kit, and different riding skills. Yes, well, fair enough. I won't repeat the item verbatim, but much of it was about the need to stay warm. And that's, again, something I have no argument with. And he says it's essential for maintaining concentration. His expert this time round was Richard Gladman, who's the IAM Road Smart's head of driving and riding standards. And what Richard said was, staying warm is essential. Your extremities will be uncomfortable when they get cold and detract from your concentration. When your core gets colder, your concentration will fall off a cliff. Even if you're not riding in extreme cold, wind chill can be serious at 70 miles an hour. And there's absolutely nothing I would disagree with there. In fact, if you go back to my staying warm special, which I did on Elevenses some weeks back, you'll know that is exactly what I was talking about the need to maintain core temperature to keep blood flowing, not just down your hands to and fit toes to fingers and toes, but also up into the brain, keeping your mental faculties on top performance. So how do you stay warm? Well, according to David Williams, no matter how many layers you squeeze under a standard motorcycle jacket, it might not be enough when temperatures get freezing. So indeed, and if you remember from my staying warm special, that was exactly the point I made. Layers work by trapping air between them. The air is quite a good insulator, but that's all it is. It's an insulator, and insulators slow down the rate of heat loss across a temperature gradient. So if the air on one side is cold and the air on the other side is warm, you will lose heat from the warm air to the cold air through the barrier. And the longer you ride and the steeper the temperature gradient, the more you chill. So what's the solution to this, given that he's just said that layering isn't actually the answer? Well, here's his answer. Apparently, few research equipment manufacturers have invested as much research into beating the cold as Italian firm Dainese. And he explains that they have created some of the highest performing winter weather gear on the market. He then explains that the state-of-the-art Antarctica range is by far the warmest gear I've tested, coming with a removable squashy down inner layer designed for temperatures right down to -25. So what's he proposing? Well, basically a layering system, isn't he? There's the system that he said a little bit earlier wasn't so effective. I also noticed that he said tested, nothing about having bought it. And quite frankly, I'm not surprised. The jacket alone from this Antarctica range will set you back £1,000 plus. If you want the trousers with their own goose down liner, then budget for another 640 odd quid. And of course, it doesn't stop there. You'll also need the Dainese boots he recommends at £270 and the Dainese gloves at £150. The life of a bike journo, given them £2,000 worth of motorcycle kit to write an article about. I read this and I couldn't help but think that for a lot of riders right now, £2,000 is pretty close to their entire biking budget, bike insurance and fuel, as well as the kit that they're going to be trying to wear. So if you're a bit short of cash and you still want to try and stay warm on two wheels this winter, I would still recommend that the very, very first thing that you spend your money on is a heated vest. As I have said many, many times before here and in writing on various posts on my own pages on Facebook, in magazine articles, and also online elsewhere. I've said it before that I tried everything to stay warm as a motorcycle courier, and I was riding back in those days in conditions which most commuters would have long since given up in, frankly. And the day that I discovered a heated vest was the day I suffered a complete revelation. I honestly cannot tell you how effective a heated vest is at keeping you warm when you're riding in poor conditions. Yes, you can then layer up over the top of it. Yes, you can then put expensive kit over it, but most of us can't afford that kind of input, thousands of pounds for jackets and trousers. It's just not going to happen for most of us. So relatively speaking, a heated vest is inexpensive. You can certainly get them for way under £200. And once you've got one, then you can, as I say, the jacket that you've already got will probably be good enough to do the trick. All you need to do then is keep the water out. And if you can do that by putting a cheap set of waterproofs over the top and throwing them away when they leak and buying another set, then you will stay a lot warmer on your motorcycle. So heated vests are far more effective than layering, and there's certainly no need to spend a couple of grand on top of the range kit to stay warm in the winter, no matter what a bike journo will tell you. Right, I shall just close out for the session by reminding you about my new newsletter, which I launched on Friday. The reason is to help overcome the Facebook algorithms, which are limiting what people see in terms of my posts. The idea is basically that you sign up for the newsletter, and then once a week you'll get the roundup of what I've been writing about delivered straight to your email inbox, complete with the links to follow it back to Facebook. I'll still be putting those posts on Facebook. I will not stop using Facebook at least for the foreseeable future. But don't forget, you can just follow a link like any other web page and it will take you off to the relevant post. So if you've missed something, that's probably the easiest way to ensure that you see everything I've been writing about. All right, okay, that is it for today. I'll be back on Wednesday. Don't forget, if you want to catch up with the previous shows, you can do it either here on Facebook. You can head over to my YouTube channel, which is Survival Skills UK, or you can find them over on my Coffee page. All right, that's it. Thanks for looking in. I trust you've enjoyed the show, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.